white man pays Reverend Martin Luther King, subsidizes Reverend Martin Luther King, so that Reverend Martin Luther King can continue to teach the Negroes to be defenseless. That's what you mean by nonviolence. Be defenseless. Be defenseless in the face of one of the most cruel beasts that has ever taken the people into captivity. That's just the American white man.
Malcolm X did serve a role. I think he played a role in pointing out the problem, calling attention to it, but his great problem was an inability to emerge with a solution.
Malcolm represents that fire, that fight, that refusal to let anybody define who we are. King represents our desire to get along with everybody, including whites.
These books wrapped up. It's dangerous if people know you're reading them.
Well, apparently I'm dangerous already.
Well, I guess everybody knows, you know what's in those books, but you got to be careful about letting people know everything you know. That's what happened to them prophets.
Which prophets are you talking about, Professor?
Jeremiah, Isaiah, Amos, Hosea, them Israelite prophets.
I'd better get out of here before you have me swimming in the head.
I can't wait to get my freedom.
Mandingo, I'll go anywhere with you. Mandingo, I love you.
I love you too, Bessie. Willie Mae.
Mandingo, I can't go back there. I love you too, Mandingo.
But Miss Ann, what about your kinfolk?
I don't care. I'm going with you.
I don't know why we leaving Mouse's house. He been good to us. He feed us on Saturday, clothes us on Sunday, and then beat us on Monday. Or was it Tuesday? I don't know.
Jasper, I just want to go out of the house. Jasper?
What?
Jasper, don't you want freedom? We going to Promised Land. The Promised Land.
Promised Land? Cleveland?
No, Jasper.
Baltimore?
No, Jasper, the Promised Land.
Oh, the Promised Land. Minnesota?
I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the Promised Land. I may not get there with you, but I I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Here are the facts. On April 4th, 1968, civil rights hero and pastor Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated while standing on the second-floor balcony of a motel in Memphis, Tennessee. The world recoiled in horror at the news. Dr. King had galvanized the civil rights movement, and at the time of his death he was working to organize and focus the burgeoning anti-war movement. 2 months after the shooting, a man named James Earl Ray was arrested at London's Heathrow Airport as he tried to leave the UK under a fake Canadian passport. The FBI had linked Ray's fingerprints to the murder weapon and a set of binoculars. He was extradited to Tennessee and pled guilty to the crime with hopes of avoiding execution. Although Dr. King was dead, his killer had been captured and justice had been served. At least that's the mainstream version. Yet multiple people don't believe James Earl Ray acted alone or that he shot Dr. King at all. Why? Here's where it gets crazy. Conspiracy theories about the assassination of Dr. King began to spread soon after his death. 3 days after entering his guilty plea, James Earl Ray tried to recant his statement, claiming that he had been framed by a criminal associate called Raoul, who allegedly hired him for various smuggling jobs. Additionally, a local bar owner named Lloyd Jowers claimed that a Memphis drug dealer named Frank Liberto gave him $100,000 to hire a hitman to shoot Dr. King, and Jowers said the man he contacted wasn't Ray.
I remember being in shock that 4 years had already passed. I planned on re-enlisting because there was nothing else out there for me in the world. It was just a few nights before I could fill out the forms to re-enlist when I was approached by some rather peculiar men. I could tell that they were powerful men by the way that the officers respected and almost seemed to fear them. They said they had a prestigious position available for me and that because of my life circumstances, I was perfect for the job. Without a family and nobody outside of the military knowing I exist, nobody was better suited. The fact that I was good with a rifle didn't hurt either. I was also informed that if I accepted their offer, there would be no record of me having ever existed. Everything from my birth certificate and my military service would disappear. The thought of my military service being erased from the world made me cringe a little, but with everything taken into consideration, this was going to be one hell of a job offer, or so I thought. I later learned that these men were billionaires, high-ranking government and military officials, and some were even world diplomats. Before you get your tinfoil hats out, I feel the need to say that this wasn't the Illuminati, some Jewish conspiracy, or the lizard people, or anything like that. This was one of the networks of powerful sociopaths, yes, but there are hundreds of those networks. Most conspiracy theorists make the mistake of thinking there is one collective behind it all. There isn't. There are networks of powerful, evil people who partake in conspiracies for a number of reasons. None of these networks have names. People are sometimes connected to multiple networks, and many of the networks have connections to other networks. But this first one that recruited me was one of the most powerful I've ever worked for. I mean, they boss around the military. That should tell you all you need to know. Obviously, I accepted their offer, This first network was interested in world politics and corruption. They did their best to bribe and control politicians around the world, and they did a damn good job of it too. I later pieced together why they kill the men they hire. They can't afford to let their secrets get out. They can't afford to suppress information like this. The more I thought about the people involved in these conspiracies, the more it made sense. I remember how Lee Harvey Oswald was dead not too long after killing JFK. And the man who killed Oswald, Jack Ruby, was dead not too long after that. Not to mention you get government reports proposing magic bullet theory. Everyone just turned a blind eye to the fact that there was more than just one shooter that day. It's weird. There's enough evidence to say something fishy was going on, but not enough to say by who. The people chalk it up to be some grand coincidence. I've been in this line of work long enough to know that there are no coincidences, especially not in politics. I can't even apply for a job because, on the books, I don't exist. They erased everything about me, and it was smart of them to do it that way. When they killed me, nobody would have known except them.
But the conspiracy theories don't end there. One of Ray's lawyers, William Pepper, claimed that the US government was responsible for the assassination and had made a scapegoat of Ray. This theory has some surprising supporters, including Jesse Jackson and Dexter Scott King, Dr. King's son. Dexter King visited Ray in prison in 1997, and he also claimed that Ray was innocent. Is there any evidence to support this claim of government involvement? It's true that beginning in 1957, Hoover directed the FBI to monitor Dr. King, wiretapping his phone to investigate his suspected communist leanings. And in 1999, Dr. King's family won a civil case that found the bar owner Jowers and others, including government agencies, guilty of the murder. The Department of Justice contests this conclusion, and on their website they address problems with the finding, maintaining that the verdict is based on hearsay rather than on fact. To add to this confusion, other researchers such as Steve Coakley believe that Jesse Jackson himself was somehow involved in the assassination.
If you had spent all this time on putting him in place, and you ain't got nobody else around Martin. Now, Andy was supposed to be shot with Martin, but Andy wasn't on the balcony. He was on the floor, so he didn't get it. Ralph was inside, so he didn't get it. Key point, if you spent all that time, and Martin's about to say you are agent, do you understand that you got to press go on the assassination? Because now Martin is so continuously condemning you, you got wiretaps everywhere. And we know what he said about Jesse in front of everybody, but who knows what he said when it was just him and Ralph? How much more severe was his accusations? Okay, let's let this run, and then we're going to go back and look at it again in straight speed. Look at.
He won a few times.
Right, look at Jesse. Martin still won't acknowledge him.
Usually he finished the speech, he was caught.
Yes, go back. Now I ask you, when you look at it, is that Jesus or Judas? Jesus or Judas? There we go. There's Jesse Jackson. There's the maid. There's the cart. There's the white boy, Lau, L-A-U-E, head of the community strike, a member of the Community Relations Service of the Justice Department, which spies on racial tension. His boss was Roger Wilkins, the nephew of Roy Wilkins. There's Muriel McCullough, the FBI, CIA, Memphis Police Department informant, who now works for the CIA. There's Martin King laying there with the towel over his face. Brother, I appreciate this pointer. This really helped out a lot. There's Ralph. There's Andy. Now, why is Jesse running up this way when everybody else came up that stairway and went that way? Because he had to make sure that room 316 and 317 didn't have no remnant of invader running out of it. Remember, he had just, see, that could have been the invaders running down that ramp right there. And when those people start that phony pointing, maybe the invaders might have went, no, down there. You understand? Because the invaders had what? Okay. Now, there's the maid, there's the cart. You see that cart? There are the wheels. You understand? At 6 o'clock, you ain't changing no beds in no motel? Check. Okay, let's let it run. There's a good shot of McCullough. There's Martin with the towel over his face. There's Martin again.
I looked up and didn't see him on the balcony, except that I saw his shoes sticking out the end of the balcony. All of the police, instead of going to where the shot came from, they were all coming to see what happened. So the picture on the balcony was us trying to say it came from over there.
Stop. Stop. There we go. That's good. There's that phony point. There's Jesse's head right there, making sure that he ran up there and gave a phony pointing. Now here's the problem with the people pointing. All of the people pointing were this way, looking up to Martin. The shots came from behind them, whether from the bushes or from the rooming house, it was behind them. Not one single person said they turned around and saw somebody or at the rooming house. Those that even saw anybody, Solomon Jones, Earl Caldwell, New York, saw somebody moving in the bushes. Check? So how is it that those with their back turns suddenly become so definitive on something they didn't even see? You understand? It's not logical that they're primary sources for a focus.
Martin Luther King remains one of the most important people in U.S. history. His birthday is a national holiday, and children study his work in school. Could it be possible that the same government agencies celebrating his life today participated in a conspiracy to kill him?
A letter asking Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to kill himself, signed, sealed, and delivered by J. Edgar Hoover's FBI. The letter was discovered by a Yale history professor who penned an op-ed for the New York Times. Beverly Gage notes the letter occupies a unique place in the history of American intelligence, the most notorious and embarrassing example of Hoover's FBI run amok. The letter, known as the suicide letter, refers to the leader of the civil rights movement as sexually psychotic, a dissolute, abnormal imbecile, and a fraud. It ends with the famous warning, "You have just 34 days. There is but one way out for you. You better take it before your filthy, abnormal, fraudulent self is bared to the nation."
Lend your sexually psychotic ear to the enclosure. You will find yourself, and in all your dirt, filth, evil, and moronic talk, exposed on the record for all time. I repeat, no person can successfully argue against the facts. You are finished. Listen to yourself, you filthy, abnormal animal.
The letter, along with a purported audio tape of MLK's extramarital affairs, was sent to the King home and discovered by his wife, Coretta Scott King.
And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my... Well, first I would talk about King's influence on me, which started when I was 16. That was the beginning of that era in my life, and I was at a Seelmar conference, which was a big conference of kids from all over the country, and we talked about political issues, social issues, and that year Dr. King was the guest speaker, and I was dissolved in tears.
Malcolm, how do you yourself feel about the white man? I believe that the white man has done a great injustice to the black man in this country by having kidnapped our people and brought us here and down to the level that we're on today. And today, instead of approaching the factors that their original mistake has created, instead of approaching these factors objectively and realistically, the greatest sin that they're doing now is trying to pretend that they never committed a crime, that they never did any wrong.
You're quoted as having said when an airliner crashed with a number of white people on board that you were glad it happened.
The white race in this country collectively are guilty of these crimes that our people are suffering from collectively, and therefore they would suffer some collective disaster, collective grief. And when that plane crashed in France with 130 white people on it, and we learned that 120 of them were from the state of Georgia, the state that my own grandfather was a slave in,
Why, to me, it couldn't have been anything but an act of God, a blessing from God, and I frankly and sincerely pray for similar blessings from Him to repeat themselves as often as He can spare them.
You have to read the history of slavery to understand this. There were two kinds of Negroes. There was that old house Negro and the field Negro. And the house Negro always looked out for his master. When the field Negroes got too much out of line, he held them back in check. He put them back on the plantation. The house Negro could afford to do that because he lived better than the field Negro. He ate better, he dressed better, and he lived in a better house. He lived right up next to his master in the attic or the basement. He ate the same food his master ate and wore his same clothes. And he could talk just like his master. Good diction. And he loved his master more than his master loved himself. That's why he didn't want his master hurt. If the master got sick, he'd say, "What's the matter, boss? We sick?" He was as sick as the master. When the master's house caught a fire, he'd try and put the fire out. He didn't want his master's house burned. He never wanted his master's property threatened. And he was more defensive of it than the master was. That was the house Negro. But then you had some field Negroes who lived in huts, had nothing to lose. They wore the worst kind of clothes. They ate the worst food. And they caught hell. They felt the sting of the lash. They hated their master. Oh, yes, they did. If the master got sick, they prayed that the master died. If the master's house caught a fire, they prayed for a strong wind to come along. This was the difference between the two. And today you still have house Negroes and field Negroes.
We are African, and we happen to be in America. We're not American. We are people who formerly were Africans who were kidnapped and brought to America. Our forefathers weren't the Pilgrims. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. The rock was landed on us.
Watch it, baby. This cat is heavy on religion.
I can see this has become a struggle between good and evil. Satan has a question.
Yes, sir, Chaplain Gill, but since neither one of us are God, I don't think either one of us are in any position to say who's good and who's evil.
Why don't you just ask your question?
We were discussing the disciples. What color were they?
Well, I don't think we know that for certain.
But they were Hebrews, were they not?
That's right.
As was Jesus. Jesus was also a Hebrew.
Why don't you just ask your question?
What color were the original Hebrews?
I have told you that we don't know that for certain.
Then you can't believe for certain that Jesus was white.
Just a moment, just a moment. God is white. Isn't it obvious?
Well, that is obvious, but we don't know if it's obvious that God is white. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that Jesus did not have blonde hair and blue eyes. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that the images of Jesus that are on prison walls and churches throughout the world are not historically correct, because history teaches us that Jesus was born in a region where the people had color. There's proof in the very Bible that you ask us to read in Revelation, 1st chapter, verse 14 and 15, that Jesus had hair like wool and feet the color of brass.
Just what are you saying?
I'm not saying anything. I'm proving to you that Jesus was not, and I might quote one of our Indian brothers, he was not a paleface.
When we're taught the truth of Africa and her significant contribution, about African Americans, about Caribbean Africans, about South American Africans, about all these different, people who were dispersed throughout the world, the largest forced migration of a people in the history of mankind. When we're taught the truth about all of these things, I think we can then address racism. We can then, address the injustices. We can then understand why we have to say Black Life Matters.
The truth that is in the Bible, but we don't believe in the lies that the white man has put in the Bible. We believe that the 20 million black people in America in the last days will be taught the truth. The trumpet of truth will sound in your ear, as it's being sounded today, the trumpet of truth. And this truth strikes your ear and strikes your heart. It'll open your eyes. It'll open your ears. It'll make you stand up. It'll do the same thing for you that truth did for the dry bones in the valley. Because the picture of dry bones in the valley is talking about you. The picture of Lazarus laying dead 4 days is talking about you. You are Lazarus. You are the dry bones. You are the prodigal son. You are the lost sheep. You are the people about whom the Bible is speaking, who will stand up in the last day when the trumpet is sounded.
I'm Jew. I'm the real Jew. I'm from the tribe called Judah. You're not Jewish.
Black people are waking up. Black people are standing up. Black people are rising up, and they're throwing fight into that knee-shaking white man. We believe we are the people of God's choice. That's what we believe. We believe we're the chosen people. We don't believe Jews are the chosen people. We don't believe Jews are the ones going to the promised land. We don't think Jews are a part of God. No, Jews are nothing but another part of that same race of devils that come out of Europe. They didn't even come out of the Holy Land. They come out of the caves of Europe. A Jew, a Frenchman, an Irishman, all of them the same thing. A race of devils. They got different kinds. Germans, Irish, all of them the same thing. Just like you got a German Shepherd, Irish Setter, a French Poodle, a Chihuahua, but they all dogs. Furthermore, we believe we are the people of God's choice. As it is written that God would choose the rejected and despised, and we can find no other person fitting this description in these last days more than the so-called Negroes in America.
Apparently, 2 men approached the speaker's rostrum and discharged shots at him from apparently very close range.
Yes, I turned around quickly, and the next thing I saw was Malcolm falling back in a dead faint.
Assalamu alaikum.
Get your hand out of my pocket! Get your hand out of my pocket, nigga! You better get your hands out of my pocket! Get your hand out!
Brother, please hold.
Calm down, please, brother. Oh my God! Go!
It is perhaps the greatest unsolved mystery of the turbulent 1960s. Who killed Malcolm X?
To transform your life.
This new book, the exhaustive work of Columbia University professor Manning Marable, outlines why the investigation should be reopened. Marable died last week, just before publication. Thomas Hagen was caught at the scene and confessed to being one of the gunmen. 12 years later, he signed affidavits claiming 2 other men, who both served long prison sentences, had nothing to do with the shooting.
As Marable's quite powerful book details, 4 of the actual assassins never were pursued, and at least one of them still lives openly in the metro New York area.
The book claims the NYPD knew Malcolm X's life was in danger, but turned the other way in the face of threats.
There were still bullet holes in the wall when this dance party was taking place. So, these kinds of questions are the kinds of questions that this book raises.
Police deny a cover-up, but in his last interview, Marable told CBS News he wanted the U.S. Justice Department to reopen the case. Now plenty of people will wait to see if this last wish will be granted.
I'd like some legal representation. These police officers have not allowed me to have any. I don't know what this is all about.
Kill the president?
No, sir, I didn't. People keep asking me that. Sir?
Shoot the president?
I work in that building.
Were you in the building at the time?
Naturally, if I work in that building, yes, sir.
Back up, man.
Come on, man. No, they're taking me in because of the fact that I lived in Missouri. I'm just a patsy.
Like the real truth will come out one day soon about the murder of Malcolm X. It's too convenient for you to say Elijah Muhammad did it. The Muslims did it. It's too convenient when the real truth comes out. And I'll tell you what the real truth is. It's that same government that will give you a holiday for a man is the same government that killed the man. It's that same government.
I knew Malcolm. I loved Malcolm. Malcolm called me the Sunday that he died. I was working Basin Street East. He said, "Brother Greg, you coming by today?" And I said, "Malcolm, I love you." And I said, "I love you so much, I don't even want to take a chance to be there." He said, "What do you mean, Brother Greg?" I said, "Well, I close tonight, Sunday night at Basin Street East." And I said, "But I had my wife book me a flight into Chicago at 8 o'clock this morning, and I'm going to Chicago, and I had way beneath my salary booked me into a college about 10 miles from the airport. And I'm going to go there and speak this afternoon, and I'm going to stay there until they tell me you dead. Because I'm not going to let this government get 2 of us for the price of 1. And I'm going to call Adam Clayton Powell when I finish talking to you and beg him not to come there. Because today, the United States government is going to get you. Okay. And I'm not going to be there. I love you. I don't even want to take a chance of my heart changing. So I went to Chicago. And when they came and they told me Malcolm's been killed today, I got back on the plane and came back here. Malcolm was killed because of another brother named DePinto. A lot of people thought he was African, but he was East Indian. He was born in Nairobi. He's the one that changed Malcolm's head from black nationalist to Pan-Africanism and made that connection from here to there. And the government said, we can't let this happen. He's the one that persuaded Malcolm when he went to Africa and stayed 7 weeks and met with all the real leaders. And then he's the one that discussed with Malcolm of bringing racism to the doorsteps of the UN. And as Malcolm was being shot dead in New York City, the Pinto was being gunned down in Nairobi. All right. Same time. All right. Same time. So don't tell me about no black Muslims. Now, let me show you how this white racist system treats black folks. The black folks that they got to kill Malcolm, Malcolm was standing on a stage like I am. They threw a smoke bomb in the back. When everybody got to watching the commotion, the brothers ran up with double-barrel shotguns and shot him. But under the Freedom of Information Act, we were able to get the autopsy of Malcolm, and all the bullets in Malcolm is going down. Now, I can't stand on this stage and y'all down there pointing up, which means the government has such a low view of those black folks that would do it. They didn't even give them real bullets. They gave them blanks. And Malcolm was shot from the ceiling top. And also under the Freedom of Information, the CIA have been forced to admit that they rented the Audubon Ballroom a week before. And that's when they went in there and tore them walls out and put them guns in the wall and shot him from a downward projection. That's what this game is about.
If somebody else did it, why sit here silent? Why not tell everything you know and do everything you can to find the other people?
Well, I don't know. I think a lot of people have a sort of a Pollyanna view of the legal system. All you got to do is go to the prosecutor and say, "Oh, here's what it is that turned me loose." No, that's it. But that's not the way it is. If you testify at the prosecutor, he'll just use what you tell him to weave it in his story. It doesn't necessarily mean he's going to turn you out or anything like that.
Captain Tommy Smith, let me see Memphis Police Department's homicide files. Do you know they showed that it was MPD's conclusion that James Earl Ray was not the gunman?
I didn't know that. Wow.
And Smith, when he was the first homicide man to get there, within 10 minutes after the accident, the shooting, says that there was a tree limb, and he indicates on a video how thick, growing diagonally through the flop house bathroom window, such that you could not see the Lorraine Motel at all. The shot couldn't have come where they claimed because it wasn't doable. And the two witnesses were so full of alcohol, he had to call 911 and have them transported. And they were effectively in a coma for a couple of days with a .73 and 7/8 BAC, which is twice the fatal dose of alcohol.
Well, actually, why are people pointing to the flop house?
Because one of the functions of the suppressor that they had on there is to confuse the sound signature. You want to use it in a jungle, so instead of the Viet Cong or the NVA saying it's right over there, they point somewhere else.
The true Jews, according to the Bible, you can check it in the Bible, you can read Job 30:30 and some other places. They have never been white. They have been people of color. And they have not stopped in Ethiopia. They were in Ethiopia, Sudan, and they have settled in West Africa. From West Africa, they have been taken as slaves to America. Brothers and sisters, blacks of America, it's you. You are the true Hebrews. You are the true Hebrews from the Bible. America gonna do everything, gonna invest as much money as it has, and gonna fight as much wars as they can, gonna invite as much weapons as they can, just to hide this away from you.
Such beautiful fur. If only mankind would embrace that which is different. Black sheep.
The time is coming when I will restore the fortunes of my people Israel.